What is an indie film? A lot may take indie films to mean that they're low quality due to the smaller budgets. But what if I told you that your favorite movie might just be an indie film, you just didn't know it? Before we get into talking about what a modern indie film is, let's talk about some of the history behind indie filmmaking. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe for more, but let's get into the video. 1908 was the year in which the MPPC was formed, or Motion Pictures Patents Company, which was also known as the Edison Trust. It functioned a lot like the cartel. 2022's Babylon encompasses that idea really well. But it created an absolute monopoly in the American film industry, taking all the major film companies of the era. Well, not all filmmakers were welcome into that exclusive club. Those not welcome became known as the independent filmmakers, in which eventually they would challenge the exclusive club's dominance in the film industry and contribute immensely to the evolution of cinema. Most of, if not all of independent filmmaking wouldn't be possible without Charlie Chaplin, D.W. Griffith, and Mary Pickford, who were very frustrated with studio control, so they would end up forming United Artists in 1919. Later in life, MGM would end up buying United Artists in 1981 and retiring the United Artists name in 2019, 100 years after its creation. But in 1919, it was a landmark that paved way for greater artistic vision. This sparked a new wave of independent directors in the 50s and 60s. This was the era of social commentary, experimentation, and rejection of mainstream conventions. Filmmakers Federico Fellini, Ingmar Bergman, and Francois Truffaut challenged Hollywood narratives and would go on to inspire a generation of filmmakers. Come the late 60s and 70s, guerrilla filmmaking emerged, and filmmakers John Waters, Jim Jarmusch, and Barbara Loden embraced its techniques, often working with insanely small budgets. This era birthed iconic films like El Topo and Pink Flamingos, which were shot for under $100,000. In 1978, the Sundance Film Festival would be founded by the one and only Robert Redford, a legend in the film industry who truly cares about filmmaking and recognizes all of its challenges. The Sundance Film Festival became a huge turning point for independent filmmaking. The idea of the Sundance Film Festival was to pave the long-needed stage for showing independent work and to build connections with distributors. In the 80s and 90s, Miramax and New Line Cinema would rise to the occasion. They had independent sensibilities while also having better distribution opportunities. Pulp Fiction, released by Miramax, had a budget of $8 million, but made $214 million, which proved the potential for indie filmmaking. In the late 90s to early 2000s, the digital camera became a lot more available to the average consumer, so you can probably see where I'm going with this, but it only further innovated independent filmmaking on minuscule budgets. For example, Kevin Smith's Clerks was made for $27,525, but grossed $3.15 million, becoming an instant success. We very recently lost an icon in the indie film industry, David Lynch, who made films like Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, which dove into the human psyche and social anxieties. Rest in peace, legend. Indie filmmaking is the cornerstone to some of the most authentic and personal storytelling cinema has to offer. Reason number one, creative control. Creative control basically is just the amount of control you have in the creation of the project. Well, duh, okay Cameron, explain it in a more thought-provoking way. You all remember Spider-Man 3, correct? Well, unlike the massive success of the first two films in which Spider-Man went up against one villain, Green Goblin, in the first one, and Doc Ock in the second one, Peter went up against not one, not two, but three different villains in Spider-Man 3. 4 if you count Bully Maguire. And by success, I mean quality of film, because ironically, Spider-Man 3 was actually the most profitable of the three movies. Of course, this made for a very convoluted mess of storylines, which ultimately made Spider-Man 3 easily the worst of the trilogy. Don't get me wrong, I actually still enjoy it. But the reason for all of that was creative control and studio meddling. Originally, Sam Raimi had plans for a fourth and was going to make Sandman the main villain of the story, while also having the side character of Harry Osborn, as well as having a different villain. That villain was not supposed to be Venom, but was supposed to be Vulture. Sony thought that Venom would be better for the movie, and then of course that became one of the worst parts of the movie. Anyway, basically, Sony and Raimi just had different visions for Spider-Man 3, which ultimately made the movie more convoluted. That's what happens when studios interfere with the creative process. Indie films, on the other hand, give the filmmaker more creative control of their own projects, which, more than not, makes for a better, authentic film. Number 2, indie films are bold. It's hard to find two indie films with the exact same or similar narrative. For the most part, the narratives are always unique and different. But bold doesn't necessarily just mean unique and different. It really just means bold. Moonlight from 2016 is a groundbreaking indie coming-of-age film about a black gay man. a movie that sparked many important conversations about identity, sexuality, and race. It famously won Best Picture, becoming the first LGBTQ movie to win the award, changing the way the world viewed cinema forever. Manchester by the Sea is another great example of bold storytelling, because this movie doesn't hold back. It's absolutely devastating, exploring grief and complexities of human relationships between loved ones and randoms. It doesn't have your playbook happy endings. It's sad, and that's all that it is. This is bold storytelling. Casey Affleck won an Oscar for his masterful performance in this film, as well as receiving a Best Picture nom, losing to Moonlight, ironically. But bold doesn't just relate to the writing. Indie film corporations take bold chances on the filmmaker, like how they did for Whiplash. Damien Chazelle made a Whiplash short film which won many awards, which attracted investors to fund his full feature. Indie companies can be more bold because there isn't a lot riding on the film needing to perform insanely well, which leads us into talking about small budgets. For the most part, your average independent film will have a small budget, but don't get confused if one has a bigger budget, because it doesn't always discredit if it's an independent film or not. In the past, an independent film was a film that was made outside the 6 major film studios. Today, really, it is just about the independency level of the filmmaker and the studio, like A24 and Neon. That's why you have your indie films like Beau is Afraid with a budget of $35 million, or Everything Everywhere All at Once that had a budget of $25 million. And actually, it looks like they're having their most expensive film yet at $90 million, which will be the next Timothée Chalamet movie, Marty Supreme, a movie about a ping pong champion in the 1950s. The next thing I want to talk about is the different kind of independent filmmaking. Like I was just discussing, the indie film company A24 has produced a lot of high-budgeted films, but they're still independent. Why? Well, there's different levels of indie films. You have your backyard level of production, basically self-funded films. Then you have a well-known director like Ari Aster, the Safdie brothers, Alex Garland, who write and direct bigger budget movies, but still have creative freedom. These are all independent, but I'd say the truest form of independent films are those that are truly done through the independency of a few people doing all they can do to round up a budget. Indie filmmaking is the truest, most authentic form of filmmaking possible, and truly the reason film is where it is today. That brings you to the end of the video. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe, but thank you everyone for sticking around to the end. I appreciate every single one of you, but remember, your movie moment is right around the corner. See you in the next video.